Hey artists, this is some basics of oil painting. So the first thing you want to do is start with acrylics, right? Get all your underpainting in, think about the basic kind of tones. Where is it darker, lighter, where is there shadows? You could paint out the whole thing with acrylic. You could get it 50% done, 80% done, however much you want. And then when you start to add the oil paint, don't go back. That's the only main rule. So oil and water, they don't mix. The first thing with oil paints to know is you'll probably want to wear some gloves. There is no water, there is no soap. There's just these mason jars that are filled with the solvent, kind of like the same paint thinner we used for printmaking. So it's all oil based. So you can grab one of these, have the lid off. When you're changing colors, your brush just goes into that solvent, and then you can have a rag handy as well to kind of wipe it on, okay? So it's all just kind of gonna be that way. I like to keep the lid on if I don't need this, just because it says that it's odorless, but we know that that's not true. The other liquid you might have is this linseed oil. The linseed oil, you can just kind of shake it up, and then as you've set up your colors, you kind of do it once. These lids snap on and off. You get your colors going once, and you don't have to clean this palette until you're done the project. So if anything, you might just keep adding more paint, and it's oil paint, right? So I like to keep it flowing, keep it wet and blendable by, once I've got my custom colors mixed here or any other color that I'm trying to preserve here, just put a few little drops of that linseed oil on there, and then you can incorporate it in with palette knife. So don't do too much oil because it's going to make it maybe too thin. You can see how it's sort of thinning out my paint as I mix that in. But if you don't have enough oil, it's going to start to get really like chunky and kind of like a weird pudding skin, and we don't like that texture either. So somewhere in the happy medium, if it's kind of glossy and it's flowing like that, that's a really good sign. I'm just gonna kind of dig and reactivate my white paint a little better here. Okay. So sometimes, you know, again, you just need to bring in fresher paints, reactivate them. I like to generally keep the colors, I know it looks super messy, but it's generally my basic colors around the edge, and then the colors I need for my food are in the middle. Okay, so then things to know as we paint with the oils. Sometimes, to be honest, I like to even use the palette knife just to lay down like a pretty thick bit of the tone. So there's different shapes and sizes of these palette knives. You can paint with that, with a popsicle stick, with whatever. And again, just kind of wipe that with your rag that's handy. The main thing you're gonna notice as you're doing oils is it stays wet for a really long time. So you can apply it pretty thickly, and then it'll take a long while to dry, but that's okay. Sometimes that's exactly what we want. Or if you want to thin it out as you're painting, you can use the solvent, and then it does more of a glaze. So all that work you did, right, in your underpainting, it has its purpose. It's gonna still show through. I'm just now coming in and softening that back. You can leave the acrylic showing in some places if you want to. And I'm gonna come in with this wide brush still and just start to build a stronger highlight. And then you'll notice it's just so easy, like with a brush that has almost no pigment on it, you can soften that out and blend it. It's gonna just keep on blending forever. The one word of caution with oil is simply this. You need to know like how strong you wanna apply, how thickly you wanna apply it. Once it's there, it's kind of there forever. It can be really hard to remove, like lift it up. It can be really hard to cover it because it's just gonna keep on mixing, right? So you just wanna avoid letting things get kind of too muddy. And by muddy, I mean like you've just gone over it and over it and over it, and it turns into this gray nothing. That's not what you want with your oil paints. But the nice thing is everything I've just done here, I would clean up at the end of the class, put this away. When I come back to keep painting tomorrow even, it's still wet. So it still can be softened, smoothed out, and blended. And you can see as I do it with the really thin kind of stuff, right? It's just flowing away. Careful as well. You can see where I've rested my gloves. You may need to come in and clean up your background. That's a place where if you wipe it away, you could cover with acrylic if you needed to, or you could just lay down some paper or anything else to kind of keep it clean. Okay, when you are finished, you just want to make sure your lid goes back on to your palette, snapped shut, that this is nice and tight, and that you've rinsed your brushes out in there. And then everything for oil, you know, the gloves get taken off. Oil paint stuff gets stored over behind the computers, not near the sink. Never go near the sink. You don't need to. And none of this should go down the sink either. So if there's any questions with that stuff, just ask. But it's super blendable and it's really fun. And it's the classic kind of painting to work with. So good luck, have fun.